The 1917 Tom Sawyer is a wonderful film. I recently read Tom Sawyer, really enjoyed it. I've been watching several adaptations, and this one is a contender for being one of my favourites. This is a silent film. It was directed by William Desmond Taylor, written by Julia Crawford Ivers, of course, based on the novel by Mark Twain, with a cast including Jack Pickford as Tom Sawyer and Robert Gordon as Huckleberry Finn. And this one really took me back in time. This one was only released about 40-ish years after the book, whereas most of the other adaptations I've watched have been a little later. I think I watched one from the 30s, most of them around about the 70s, 80s. So to have one that was released much more closely in line with the publication of the book makes it just a little bit more exciting. In terms of the adaptation itself, it's not bad. It tells the story of young Tom Sawyer and his friends and their adventures. And I won't go into too much detail. I don't want to give away any of the specifics, but they have quite a gentle adventure. But there are moments when things get a little bit more intense and a little bit risky. I do think the first half of the film, roughly, is a lot better. I think the elements of the adaptation they focused on were more interesting, for me at least. The second half feels a little bit slower, and the elements they focused on were not necessarily some of my favourite parts of the novel. So for me, the first half was a lot stronger, but the second half was still pretty decent. It's easy to follow. There are a lot of intertitle cards, but most of them only have a short amount of text, so it's not a tremendous amount of reading. I know not everybody loves intertitle cards, but with silent films they're kind of necessary, and I do think that they had a good balance of the number of cards but with the amount of writing on each card, so I think that worked really, really well. Also, there's a good length of time on screen to read them. Good music, though I'm not entirely sure if the music in the version I listened to or watched was the original music that would have been played in theatres. So that's just something that's worth bearing in mind. Great performances. We have some necessary exaggerated movements to convey their emotions, but they weren't too over the top. Great locations, really nice costumes. It's a fun film. It's a solid adaptation. It really did take me back in time. And if you're a fan of Tom Sawyer, I thoroughly recommend it. If you're brand new to Tom Sawyer, on the one hand, it could be a decent introduction. But as I said, the second half maybe isn't as strong. I don't think they focused on the elements that I think were the most interesting. So give it a go. If you're brand new to the story, it's still a good way to explore the characters, to get to know their personalities. I do think the way Tom Sawyer, for example, was presented was very recognisable as the character. So I don't really have any major complaints. I still thoroughly enjoyed it. And it could be a contender for a favourite just because of how immersive it was and how easily it felt like I'd been transported back in time. The 1917 Tom Sawyer is ultimately a pretty great experience, and I'm happy to recommend it.